In this video, we will learn about the nullish coalescing operator and the optional chaining operator in JavaScript. The nullish coalescing operator is used to provide a default value when dealing with null or undefined values. It ensures that you only default to a specified value when the original value is null or undefined, unlike the logical or operator, which defaults on falsy values like 0, false, or an empty string. So let's look at an example of how we can use the nullish coalescing operator to return a default value when the value is null or undefined. So I'll define a variable called letUser and assign it to null, and then I'll say let username. I'll assign it to user, and then using the nullish coalescing operator, which is double question mark, I'll return what? A default value of guess. So it's either I am returning the user or I'm returning a default value of what? Guess. So when I try console.login username, let me go to my terminal and run using node. So we get guess because the value for this user is what? Null. When I change it to undefined and run my code again, we get guess. But when I provide a value of, let's say, Bob, which is not null, and clear my terminal and run it again, we get Bob return. So this is how the nullish coalescing operator works, which is used to return a null, a default value if the value before it returns a null or undefined result. Or better still, this when I try using the pipe character or the logical or, which is like this, and run my code in my terminal, we get the same result as specified. But when I change this to 0, let's say I just change this to 0 and clear the terminal and run the code, we get guess instead of returning what? 0, because the logical or operator works with what? Falsy value. So since this is falsy, it returns what? The default value, which is guess. But if we use the nullish, when I comment this out and use the nullish coalescing operator and run my code, I get 0 returned to me. So that is how the nullish coalescing operator works with what? Null and undefined values. So let's look at another example. Let's say I have a function. Let me just use arrow function, a simple greet function here, which will take the name and then return. Let me just put here user name, and then it returns, or I'll just console.log, let's say hello, then I'll put this here, and then the user name here. So hello username. So before that, if the username has been provided, I'll just reassign it to username. Then using the nullish coalescing operator, I'll return a default value of what? Guess. So if the username is provided, it will return the username to us, or if it is not provided, it will return a default value of hello guess user. So when I go ahead and then call my code, my greet function, when I run it, let's see what you get. We get guess because I didn't provide any username. But the second one, when I call this function again and then I provide a value of, let's say, Bob, and run my code, I get what? Hello Bob. So this is how the nullish coalescing operator can also be used. I know I can maybe put a default value here of, let's say, Bob here as well, and this one also works, and I will avoid using the nullish coalescing operator. But in this example, I just want to show you the different ways in which the nullish coalescing operator can be used. Now let's look at another example. So I'll just create a simple, let me comment these ones out quickly. I'll create a simple object. So I'll say const, a config object, and I'll assign it to timeout. It will have a property of timeout, which is what? 0. So let's say I want to say const the timeout. I'll set it to the config dot timeout. Then I'll use the nullish coalescing operator if the timeout is not there, maybe I'll just return 5,000 milliseconds or something, and then I'll just console.log the timeout. Then when I go to my terminal and clear it and run, we get 0 returned to us. If I should use, let's say, the logical or operator like this and run my code, we get the 5,000 milliseconds because the logical or operator works with what? Foresee values. But the nullish coalescing operator only works with what? Null and then undefined values. So let me just put this here and run my code. We see that we are getting 0. So that's it about the nullish coalescing operator. The next operator we'll look at is the optional chaining operator. Let me just comment this once out quickly. So the optional chaining operator allows you to safely access deeply nested properties without having to check if each reference in the chain is valid. If a reference is null or undefined, it short circuits and returns undefined. So let's look at an example. So I'll have a user object, so I'll just say const user obj, and then this user is having a profile object here, and then is having a user, or let me just put here first name, and I'll just put John here and save. So this is our user object. Now let's try accessing. So I'll just say let user name. I think I have defined a username variable here, so I'll just comment this one to out to prevent the conflict down there. So let username and assign it to our user. Then instead of using the dot operator, we can use the optional chaining operator, which is a question mark and then a dot to access the name of my object is user object. So I'll use the optional chaining operator, which is question mark and then a dot to access the profile, and then another one question mark and dot to access the first name property, and then I'll just console.log user name, and when I run my code, we get John outputted in the console, in the terminal. So this is how we can use the optional chaining operator to access deeply nested objects, and this one also works on null and undefined values. When it returns null or undefined, it will just short circuit and give you undefined. So let's say this first name variable, I want to access another variable of, let's say, maybe some gibberish here which is not there. When I run this, we get what? Undefined. We get the undefined in our terminal here. So it just returns undefined for us. But we know that there is nothing on the first name variable like that. So this is how we can use the optional chaining operator to access properties of an object. I can also access a method. So let's say I put a greet method here, or better still, yes, I'll just put a greet method here like this, and then what I'll do is I'll just console.log hi there. I can access this method, so I'll just say our object, our user object, then with the optional chain operator, which is question mark and then a dot, I can access the profile, and then question mark dot, then I can access the greet method like this. And then when I go to my terminal and run my code, we get hi there in the console, and then this one is also console.logging the name John. And let's look at another example. So I'll just comment these ones out. I'll just create an array. So I'll just say let users and set it to an array of users. So this one will be Bob, and then another one name, and then set it to Alice and save. And then we can access the username, or I'll just say let first user name, then I'll assign it to users, our users object. Then using the optional chaining operator, which is a question mark and then a dot, I'll access the first array, the first object in the array, and then using the optional chaining and then a dot, then the name property. And then when I console.log the first username variable, clear my terminal and use node to run, we get what? Ball. So this is one way we can use the optional chaining operator. In terms, it's in a case whereby this return a null value. So let's say I'm trying to access the age property or something on the age property from this user's object. It's an array of objects. It's when it returns null or undefined, it will just short circuit and give us what? Undefined. So let's look at another example quickly. So let's say I have a cons of, let's say, books object. So I'll just say is equal to an array of data, and then okay, let me just change this to an object which has a data property, which is an array of, let's say, a book. So the book has a title. So let's say animal farm, something like this. And then it has an author, and then let's say the author is what? An object. It's also an object which has a first name, and then maybe put over there, and then a last name property, or better say I'll just take the last name property out like this. So this is our object of book. So I can say I want to get the last name of in case I want to get the last name of the author which is not defined in the object. So I'll just say let author last name and set it to the books object dot the data. So instead of using dot, I'll just use optional chaining here, then dot data. Then since it's an array, we can access it, the first value from the array like this. So I'll use the optional chaining, and then I'll just access the first element object there. So let's console.log this first and see what we are getting. I'll just say console.log author name and run my code. So we are getting our object here. So on this object, we can then access what? Maybe the title or the author. So I'll just use the optional chaining. Let me close my terminal quickly and then access the author property. And then on this author property, I can access what? The first name. And when I run my code, we get what? Oh well. So that's the first name. But let's say we want to access what? The last name property, and then I write last name here, we get undefined. So instead of our code breaking or something, it just short circuits and then gives us undefined. When I comment this down and then try using let me just, since I'm using let, I can just redeclare this quickly. So when I just remove the optional chain and use the dot method, the dot operator, sorry, and then run my code, we get undefined. Actually, when I try accessing something on the last name which is not defined here, we get an error over here. So you see that we are getting an error over here in my terminal. But with this one, let me comment this one out quickly. With this one, when I try accessing something on it using the optional chaining method, let me clear my terminal, run my code, we get what? Undefined. So this is how we can use the optional chaining operator and then the nullish coalescing operator to work with null and undefined values in JavaScript. These operators also helps make code more concise and readable by reducing the need for repetitive null checks and providing a way to handle null or undefined values gracefully. So that's all for this video. Please follow or subscribe and like for more videos and contents like this. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.